All right now, President Obama is hanging on to a very slim lead that puts the race in a virtual tie. These are the latest numbers that we have out there. Maybe not reassuring for anybody. The Gallup Daily EKG somehow has the president surging to a 5-point lead. I'm sure tomorrow it'll flip the other way. In the CNN-ORC poll, they have the president up with a 3-point lead, which mirrors what we had last week. At the NBC Wall Street Journal poll, they have it at 49-46. They have always a very surprisingly low undecided number. Let's bring in my panel. Nia Malika Henderson is a political reporter for The Washington Post. Anita Dunn, former Obama White House Communications Director and Democratic strategist with SKD Knickerbocker, not to be confused with the New York Knicks. And David Hawkings is the editor of CQ Roll Call's Daily Briefing. What's the Knickerbocker? Is this about the Knicks?
It is a little
about the Knicks.
It's our New York office's identity. Yes.
Yeah, okay. And it is all about the Knicks? That's kind of sad.
No, it's not. Actually, it can go into New York political history sometime when you want to do a special show on it.
About about where the Knickerbocker really began.
Really comes from. Yeah, we'll do that special sometime. Okay.
Only if Bill Bradley comes on here and explains it, and which he might.
Which he could. Okay.
For hours. David, I want to start with you. What did you learn from all this polling that's out there? I'll throw up a few things. But, you know, we had it with the Supreme Court ruling. You saw, it looked to me like it was all skeptical Democrats got on board, is what it looked like to me.
It does indeed. Are we talking about the Supreme Court poll?
I'm talking about the Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court. It looks to me like this tax penalty, no tax thing is kind of at 60-40 that's going to flip in a couple of days. I mean, that's in the hunt.
Right.
And it looks to me as though the public is really pretty swayable on the court, and it looks like they will. You ask them one day, you ask them another day, they'll change their mind. If you ask them after the Arizona case, maybe they'd have said something different.
And does it matter?
It seems not. I mean, certainly Romney and Obama have seemed to make a truce on this in saying that they're not really going to talk about health care very much. You know, you look at all of the press releases and comments that Romney has made so far, not a lot on health care. This whole idea of it being a tax, talk to some Democrats, they feel like people who already don't like health care already understand it as a tax, like they already understand it as a burden. So this new framing isn't necessarily going to...
Anita, is it fair? I saw somebody from one of your campaign colleagues say that it was that the Romney campaign is providing the president with a get-out-of-jail-free card.
Well, I think that the fact that Governor Romney's campaign had to concede the point here was an important thing, because obviously puts them greatly at odds with what congressional and Senate Republicans want to do. But more to the point, it takes that issue off the table as an attack for Romney. Now, of course,
today they're trying to... But did you expect them to go on health care?
Here's the problem, Chuck, and I think the last week really shows some of the core problems with Romney's candidacy, between the Arizona immigration case and the fact that he still can't figure out what to say about it, okay, that he still hasn't really answered any questions about both the DREAM Act or the immigration, between the health care ruling, which at the end of the day does bring up his core problem that on this issue, the Obama plan was modeled on the Massachusetts plan. The president has said it. Yeah. People in Massachusetts who wrote Romney's plan have said it. And this particular issue really makes that clear. And then finally, the Vanity Fair piece this morning about his money.
That's a long piece, and I don't want to get into it now. I think you have to sort of digest it. It's a very long piece about going candidacy. But it's interesting, David. She brought up the immigration thing. Politically speaking, as far as the campaign is concerned, because the court ruled the way they did on health care, which you could argue became status quo politics. They could have sort of thrown a wrench into the system. Instead, we're now at status quo. Republicans still upset, Republicans still arguing repeal, Democrats saying, hey, we were right, let's move on. Everybody wanted to move on from health care. Is the immigration decision actually politically potentially more impactful?
Oh, I think it is. I think that between now and the fall, it's going to energize, you know, the crucial bloc, of course, the Hispanics. It's going to, I think it's going to energize maybe the Republican right more. I think it's easier to understand than the health care decision, much easier to understand.
Yes.
So I think it's going to come up in a lot more, bar debates than health care.
And what's interesting, by the way, John Roberts in the majority on both of those. And we have some polling on him, and shockingly so, you saw suddenly Democrats seem to like John Roberts, and Republicans not so much. Look at these favorable numbers. Overall, 41-24, which actually really wasn't much of a change. He had that same, but it's the makeup of his favorable rating and unfavorable rating that has changed. Look at the favorable rating among Democrats, 51-12, and among Republicans, 30-38. Earl Warren still had worse ratings with Republicans than John Roberts. Boy,
and this could be a temporary love affair. I mean, there are a couple of cases that are coming up, affirmative action, DOMA, as well as voting rights, and so he could certainly swing back and become not so well liked among Democrats.
This is the new Democrat conspiracy theory. It's about John Roberts was buying political capital. That he could do this. Is that what you believe?
Listen, I've never pretended to predict what the Supreme Court was going to do. But what is important, I think, just going back to the health care opinion for a second, is if you look in these polls at the president standing on health care versus Romney standing on health care, it's very clear that the continued attacks from the Republicans on health care have a potential to hurt the Romney candidacy because Romney lags so far behind the president.
And the fatigue factor, too.
Yes, and the fatigue factor.
When we come back, I want to talk about our battleground maps that we talked about, merging them with the actual ad spending. But trivia, we asked, on what day did the Continental Congress vote for independence? The answer is July 2nd, 1776. Now, the Continental Congress approved this resolution, and they wrote that these united colonies are, and of right, ought to be free and independent states. John Adams believed that July 2nd should have been celebrated as America's birthday, but we instead celebrate July 4th. I guess it is the day of the Declaration that was adopted. It's our way of also sticking it to Congress, right? Even then. Even at our beginning, we were not going to give Congress that sort of power. Anyway, we'll be right back. You're watching the Daily Rundown only on MSNBC.